Cool. Big round of applause for Fintan, please.
So, my name is Fintan Ryan. I'm working for Weaveworks. I'm community manager at Weaveworks, which makes me technical enough to be dangerous, but probably not technical enough to be able to answer questions in the same depth as people like Kelsey can do. So, somewhere in between. Timo actually gave us some really nice kind of introductions here. So one of the things I'm going to talk about tonight is what we're referring to as containers across clouds. And he talked about multi-data centers and actually multi-cloud Weave networks. And that's going to be what I'm going to hopefully demo at the end of the day. So we'll see how we get on. Before I start running through this, I know the question was asked already how many developers are here. So could I just answer that show of hands again, just so I can get a take on the audience. Okay. And the network admins that I won't be able to answer the questions properly to. And how many operations types folks are here. Right, so we got a nice mix. One of the promises that we've had for years in technology is this concept of application portability, and we can move around independent of infrastructure. We've never really had anything that's allowed it to materialize properly. We're not quite there yet, but containers are definitely getting us part of that journey. And from a developer standpoint, that means I've got a much easier deal doing it. That's why most people are here tonight, because it has suddenly made things much, much easier. And the thing is, we've heard this before. We've had various people tell us, okay, what kind of technology is going to solve all the problems this week? And currently, containers is the technology everyone's talking about. Okay. If you haven't seen that Dover ones, it's one of my preferred ones. So containers as we all know, easy to use, very good in a kind of as a single purpose environment, very easy to use on your own host. So nice and simple, and everything works, and you can link things together, and doesn't get very, very complex. We start moving to multi-host environments, which is what we're all actually living in. We're no longer on our laptops. Then networking starts getting difficult. We start dealing with an awful lot of things that we've had from our past in terms of how we deal with monolithic architectures, how we do port mapping, all this kind of stuff. Okay. It becomes very, very non-trivial. That's kind of when we start entering things like the ambassador pattern, and we're into this really complex layer of things we're trying to map everything together, and it just becomes very hard to maintain very, very quickly. And we kind of sat back and we looked at this, and we kind of went, okay, we'd like to make people's lives much, much easier. How can we make things much, much easier? And the idea is basically make the ability for us to actually move application clusters around very, very easily. Okay? The idea that we can do things, certain tasks very simply, things like service discovery can be done very easily using known tools that are already out there. We can do things like IP address allocation and things like that automatically. And most importantly, it just works. You just want something that you can just run a command, forget about it, it'll do all of the rest for you. You don't need any extra specialist knowledge. So back to the question of how many people here are developers, how many are networking administrators and experts. Not all of us actually really want to know the ins and outs of the network. We just want to be able to layer things on top, and we want to be able to define our application and then worry about the networking, not the other way around. Let's tell you a little bit about Weave. So Weave itself, the project was launched on GitHub back in September of last year. I joined them in February of this year. I've known Alexis and Matthias, the guys who set up Weave for a good deal of time before that. Our last release is 0.9.0, so we're working our way towards that infamous 1.0 release. We're actually about to do our 0.10 release in the next couple of days. I saw this evening that we pushed some stuff to it, which is basically the first trial for that. Got about 60,000 downloads of the current release. We're pretty well liked on GitHub. We've got over 3,000 GitHub stars fairly quickly. The Weave Tools containers, I think we all know that's kind of a number that's very easy to make look good, but it's one that Docker uses, so I think we can use it as well. So what does Weave do? Very simply, it allows us to connect services across hosts, across data centers, and define one layers across clouds. So that's kind of a marketing bump. But it makes it easy to do this, and the idea being that you can do it without making any changes to your application. You develop your application as you would Traditionally, you stick it into a container and off you go and you start using it. So that's it on a single host. And basically we launch a Weave container, Weave tool, and we run all of the Docker commands through Weave. Now there's a couple of things I'll touch on the end and things that are changing around how we do that. But essentially it's a command Weave, you type Weave run and your standard Docker type inputs and it kicks it all off. Then you move to multiple hosts, you just launch 2 Weave containers, you connect them together, and you launch all of the other things the same way as you have before. You don't have to make any changes, you're not doing any code mapping, everything is just seen within the Weave and used. You can also expose 1 or 2 of them if you need to out of other things or keep everything in together. Now, more interestingly is when you start doing it across clouds. So, got here Cloud A and Cloud B. The example I'm going to use later on is I'm going to use AWS and DigitalOcean, and I'll walk through that in a bit more detail. But here it's basically things are connected across the cloud. We can encrypt the traffic, which you'd obviously want to do. The demo tonight I'm not encrypting the traffic because I was being a bit lazy, and there's nothing very significant in it. The other part that we have is Weave DNS. So I'm going to stop again and ask, how many people here have had an experience of trying to get DNS stuff changed and not enjoyed that experience? So that's you go through the world of the ITIL change request or whatever inside an environment, or else it tends to just be an awkward experience. What we've done in Weave is we've bundled and modified kind of a slightly smaller subset of DNS into Weave. Currently it launches as a separate container, but we're actually bundling it in 1.0 version. It's going to be bundled all into one single tool, so that it doesn't even require a second command to launch. Part of what Weave DNS does is it allows you to just launch your containers. Okay, so you just add a host name, launch it, Weave registers your IP address, makes it visible across everything by way of your host name. Okay. We can do a couple of simple things. So we can do very, very basic round robin load balancing. If you need something more complex, use something more complex. But for a lot of people, it's probably all that you need. You just need to be able to get to some form of host that's actually up. And we can query it through a lot of known tools. So you can use dig, take a look at things very, very simply. You can use all your traditional libraries that are there. You don't need any extra tooling to do this. Okay. So, Weave DNS and Weave tied together, same kind of thing. It's just there's no changes to your application at all. It's just very straightforward. I'm going to talk about a couple of our upcoming things. So, we mentioned about, so I'm going to touch on the second one first, which is fast data. We mentioned about the performance thing. So we are quite aware of the fact that all of the networking in userland at the moment. We're working on an internal implementation of OVS, which will take a bunch of the traffic when you're on the same host and move it through things, and it does a bunch of other things. I will freely admit I don't know the ins and outs, so I haven't got to play with it in any sort of depth yet, but that is coming up quite soon. IPAM is IP address management. So at the moment you have to specify an IP address to Weave. We're changing that so that you can just launch Weave and it'll do that for you. I think DHCP to an extent, but basically you tell it what subnet you want things to run on and off it goes. It'll just handle the rest of that for you. Weave DNS for making a bunch of changes in that area. There's certain things around caching, and that eliminate needs to think about TTLs, and there's other such things that will just make it a lot tighter and a lot quicker, and also in terms of how we're gossiping along, in terms of how we're sharing the information and making that much tighter. Final one here is Docker plugins. So PowerStrip was mentioned earlier on. So does anyone here ever use PowerStrip? Have you heard of it? Okay, so that's a couple of people. So PowerStrip is a really interesting technology that came from a company called Cluster HQ. So I think Luke Morrison spoke here relatively recently. So PowerStrip allows you to plug in a set of different types of hooks into Docker. Ultimately, the vision of PowerStrip when it started was that would go away and it would actually be plugins and Docker that you could easily plug in, which is just the kind of batteries included but optional model that we're talking about. We're working on Docker plugin stuff at the moment. That's all kind of just going on. There's some of the stuff on Git and there's a couple of issues and stuff I can point people on afterwards. There's a couple of other features that are coming, but they're all very much in the guts of the codes. They're things that are important to us, but from the point of view of using it, they're not actually that interesting. So I tend to be more on the user side, so I don't find them that interesting either. Finally, we're always open to getting pull requests. Okay, so if you see something that you want to do, if you're interested in things, we just want people to be involved, and just it's there on GitHub. Just feel free to take a look at stuff. Right, so now I'm about to put my heart up here somewhere, and I'm going to try a demo. As I said, what could possibly go wrong when I'm trying a demo? So let's take a look at what we have here. All right. So very quickly, before I start running through this, you can tell I've got some of this scripted. The reason I've got this scripted is I've got a couple of hosts on AWS, I've got a host in DigitalOcean, and I've got a bigger host on my laptop. What I'm going to go through here, and so you can automate this in a lot more detail. We've pushed out some stuff with Ansible, we'll push some stuff with Chef in the next week or so as well. But basically, we go through, we set up a host. So on our AWS host, we're doing our, it's easier here, so I'm pointing at the screen, which is going to help. We basically just have this command, weave launch, and then weave launch DNS, which launches our DNS server. So they're going to get combined, as I said. That's our first host. The next host we tell the next host that we want it to peer into this network, so we tell it to go to the public IP address of this host. And similarly then we just launch DNS for another IP address, and off we go again. This is launching the same thing on the DigitalOcean side, and it will connect into the same network that we've created on AWS, and then I'll come back, this is another script that I'll run after that. I'll show you the status as we're going along here as well. So fingers crossed all of this will work, and if it doesn't, I don't know, I'll claim some sort of excuse. Very, very quickly, the IP address that we're on at the moment, take note of that as well, because that's gonna come up in this in a few minutes when we start going through it. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so this is going to go off and it's going to go create. So first off, just so you can see, there isn't any Docker images running on the AWS host. You don't have to trust my output, which is in the script. It's launching, going through this launch weave and weave DNS in each one of the AWS hosts. It takes a couple of seconds to launch the containers, and then it will create a network. So we're going to see a weave status output from this in a second.
Is it possible to increase the font size?
So I can try it further, yeah. And okay. So that should be all that long. So I'm going to go quickly up here first and just explain what's going on. The part that's most interesting here is this peers part. So this is where we've connected our different hosts together on a Weave network. So any containers that we launch afterwards will be connected across these networks. So these are two Amazon ones, so that's within the same title. So that's pretty straightforward. We've added in another peer here, which is one we've added into DigitalOcean, the one that's running on DigitalOcean. Now, why am I showing this? Let's say you've developed an application, you're running on an AWS, you're not very happy, you want to move it to DigitalOcean, you want to move it to software, you want to move it to Rackspace, wherever. You can start moving things around transparently without actually impacting how your application is perceived in public. So, I'm just going to have to move this slightly because it's, so next part I'm going to do, I'll just show what this is doing. I will increase the font size of it. Launch apps is basically just going off and it's going to run a couple of applications with Weave on different places. So I'm going to run a very simple container. These are actually containers from other examples that I've done. First one on AWS, on an AWS host, another one on the second AWS host, then we're going to run on AWS, then one on DigitalOcean. Again, they're all going to be connected together. So just to kind of run through the syntax as well. So we basically got this weave run minus with DNS, but the rest of this is basically your standard Docker syntax for taking yourself on. So it's your IP address, your host address, whether you want things to be interactive. In this case, this actual one is an Ubuntu thing which with kernel installed on it. So I'd like to be able to get into the location. Okay, so let this off. Oh, I do know sometimes some of these things fail, so we'll see what happens.
It's going to work.
It's going to work.
Yes.
So at this stage we've got a couple of containers running in various places, across things, so that's all. That's still running separate. And so you see there's a whole bunch of extra connections after opening up because the network's after pulling all these things together. So all of the traffic between these is going across UDP, as was mentioned earlier. The one thing that you have to do to get all this stuff to work is you have to open up the UDP port for the traffic. I will be shutting all these down after, so hopefully you won't do any damage between now and the time I finish the demo. But at the moment my firewall rules are wide open. It's just like anything you can connect to it, but obviously you limit it down to what you actually need to do. Now, the part that becomes a bit more interesting is when you start. So let's just do this first. This is a vagrant instance running on the laptop. Now let's say I want to take a look at my Weave network somehow. There should be a vagrant instance running on my laptop. It is Ubuntu, so it's going to take some time. Actually, I chose to use everything with Ubuntu sealed because I actually thought I was going to be between two core West Coasts in some ways. So, yeah, so nothing running there at the moment. Right? So I have a script which will launch all this stuff here. This is just going to launch and connect my laptop into the Weave network. So now, effectively created, I won't call that a cloud, but we'll pretend it's across 3 different clouds.
It's the Mac cloud.
The Mac cloud. There's someone in Apple smiling at the moment. So at this stage, let me increase the font size and that again. So if you remember I said to take a note of the IP address, so at this stage we've now added in my machine, which is going through whatever proxy we're at here, and that's been added into the overall network as well. As you saw all the commands, they're very straightforward. There's not much to understand about for a normal person to understand about the underlying bits. Now, let's go. So that's everything connected. Here. So I've been very lazy. I'll have that there. So I just launched this container here, which is just an Ubuntu shell container. So I'm going to do this. Okay. So that's the container that's running on my laptop. Now, what I was looking for earlier was these host names because so the hello.weave.local one you're talking about, that's the one that's running on DigitalOcean, which I'm just paying directly from the container on my laptop. I'll do a curl on that, tell me hello world. as all good demos do. If I go to the AWS one, so that's the first one that I launched on Amazon. If I go to it's a container from a different example, but that's the container running on Amazon. You've seen with the commands, there was really no changes that we're making. There's nothing significant. You just run the containers, and your networking is just taken care of for you. The major things that will be a bit different.
Any clue where the packet loss is coming from?
Any idea where the packet loss is coming from? I'm going to blame it on the network, but not the Weave network.
That's fine.
I don't know. It's going across lots of different places, so I think you're invariably going to have some. Just another one. This is on the DigitalOcean box. Yeah. Again, you can see the same thing. They're all connected in together. That's effectively the demo. The key parts versus the scripts that are running there, the new versions that are coming on, the IPAM stuff means you're not even going to have to think about the IP addresses. They're going to happen. I think we're looking at automatic name allocation. I don't know if that's something we quite want to do yet, but it's definitely something that we're looking at doing too. And a few other bits and pieces like that. I'll go back theoretically to the slides. So that was what I think we managed to do, which is connect Docker networking, Docker across multiple hosts, across multiple networks, across multiple data centers without really that much hassle. So with that, I'm happy to take questions. I am going to preface me taking questions with, said I'm technical enough to be dangerous, but if there's questions I can't answer, I will happily take them back and get the right answers and get them back to you. We would love people to get involved. We're on IRC pretty much all the time. Find us on Twitter, you can mail us, and then the most obvious place to get involved is on GitHub. Please feel free to take a look, pull it down, break it, and see what happens. So with that, questions?
Basically, there were. Can you switch back to the demo or one of the demos? Basically, there were a lot of numbers on the screen, which is fine. I'm just wondering, is it basically showing you the steps it's taking to route the package, or what is the exact thing? Because in the bottom there's like routes. It's pretty clear, but it just says the same.
These ones here.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the pair ones, for example. There's like 3 results. Is that like the way the package flows, or what?
I can't actually answer that one properly. As far as I'm aware, yes, that is what it is. It groups them together as more peer provider, tries to make sure all the connections are there. But I'm not 100% certain. I will get an answer to that. So if I get
Looks like neighbors.
So which ones are you talking about? The top stack?
It's the status of the review we're doing.
Yeah, so those are its routes that it can take to, so it can try to find the shortest path if one of the links go down. But yeah, that's just the guys it knows about.
Yeah, okay. So it's clear.
Is it possible to play with this at home? Can we get a copy of this?
Yeah, so you can get a copy with it. There's also getting started guides on our website. So our website is weave.works, and all the code for the getting started guides is up on GitHub. I'll be putting the code for this demo in a slightly tidied up format up on GitHub early next week. So it's all there. It's all there to play with. The demos are generally written to be one of 2 styles. They'll either run on Vagrant on your home machine, they'll fire up 3 or 4 hosts and do whatever, or else they will use something like AWS or another provider and just connect them there. So yeah, they're all available to use. And there's actually for Kelsey, there's some very, very cool examples, which I know you've seen from Ilya, one of the guys who works with me, that are done on CoreOS as well, which are well worth taking a look at. Ilya does all sorts of mad, crazy things with Weave and other technologies. It's quite cool. Any other questions, guys? I will be around drinking beer, so feel free to afterwards. I have to keep up the national stereotype no matter what. I'll provide the details of the getting started links, etc. to be sent out afterwards as well. Okay. Thank you.